Okay, 1998 Porsche 986 Boxster. I'm going to be doing the lower control arms with ball joints. I took it in. Haven't even had a chance to be under the car yet. I've driven it once since I got it. Took it in to get the safety inspection, and the guy said, the mechanic said the lower ball joints and the windshield wipers. So lower ball joints are going. Ordered these, and they're aluminum. I think they're aluminum. Pretty sure they're aluminum. Anyway, come with all the bushings, ball joint, and everything. So first thing I'm going to do is jack up the car, remove the wheel, put it on jack stands, and we'll move forward. This is probably a 20-minute job per side. So back in a minute. Okay, so the two rear bolts that hold the main arm of the lower control arm on are eccentric bolts, so that it's for providing for your wheel alignment. You have to mark them before you pull them out. As you can see, hold on a second, this little mark that I put there and corresponding on the bolt. Both sides, front and back. Hopefully you can see that. So we can get them back to the basic spot before once we're all done, and then we can take it in for an alignment once this is all done. So mark those to make sure you get them back in the proper place after tightening them up. Back in a second. Okay, we're starting on the driver's side, or the left side of the vehicle. Passenger side if you're in Europe. But anyway, rear end, rear ball joint, and control arm. First thing I'm going to remove is this 18mm bolt on top that holds the ball joint in. I don't think I can get an open end on there. Now I'm going to have to use a closed end. And again, 18mm. Well, that wasn't on extremely tight. Anyway, you don't want to watch me unbolting a bolt. So I'm going to unbolt this and back when it's all off, because this is going to be like a quarter turn at a time. It's going to take 2 or 3 minutes. Back in a sec. Okay, so as you can see, hopefully that sunlight is not nailing you. Let me move this camera. Okay, so the top nut, you will not be able to get it off past the drive. There we go. Past the drive shaft, it's going to go up there and hit the drive shaft. That's okay. Just loosen it up. Put a little bit of lube on it. You want it as high up the shaft as you can and loose, so that you'll be able to move it back and forth freely once we drop the ball joint. Because it's a taper shaft inside of here, it's pressed in with a taper. And once we loosen that, we want to just be able to spin that off by hand. And we won't be able to do that until this lateral link. There's another bushing inside this arm, the lateral link that goes forward. This is a 21mm, if I'm not mistaken. Let's try a 21. Yeah, bottom is an 18. So let's go ahead and pop that out. I think it's an 18, better be. There we go. Someone's car alarm is going off. I don't think I'm going to be able to loosen this bolt. I might be able to get that bolt joint off once this bolts out. Come out of there. Oh God, I can't get that on. Let's just throw an 18 on there. And wind that out. Oops, sorry for hitting the camera. Sorry, this is taking a while. Again, if you Porsche guys are not familiar with the stuff I do on Mercedes, I don't do a Haynes manual version of fixing stuff. I show exactly what it takes and what crap I go through, what pitfalls you may find, and what mistakes I will make doing this, because I don't do this every day on Porsches for a living. Or I probably wouldn't want to give you any tips on it, because it would be taking money from my pocket. Okay, so hopefully I can whack on this and we can release that ball joint. The taper, I'm probably going to need to apply a little bit of force with a pry bar in between here. Push up on this and push down on the arm as I'm tapping on this to release the pressure. Back in 1 second. Let me get a pry bar. Okay, so let me see if I can just push the lateral link. Oh, it moves easy. Forward. Is the joint, is its ball joint good? Yeah, its joint's good. Okay, so that'll make sure that there's room for this play for this to move up and down. Pry bar. So I'm going to pry up on the hub and down on the arm. Ooh, and hopefully I can get in there with enough room to actually tap. Oops. I don't care about this ball joint because I am removing it and replacing another. If this doesn't work, I'll just get my pickle fork. I usually don't like using pickle forks because they wreck everything they touch. That one's stubborn. Okay, back in a second. Okay, since it wouldn't come off, I'm going to have to use a pickle fork ball joint separator. And again, you only use these things in last. I hate using them. But anyway, this ball joint boot is going to be destroyed using the pickle fork. But since I'm replacing the arm with the ball joint, why do I care? I'm not trying to save this ball joint or this boot. And it is just a sloped fork that goes in there. And as you tap it in, it applies pressure and pushes up and separates a ball joint. Hopefully. And there we go. And as you can see, it made a rough ass mess of this fork, or this boot. So anyway, now we can pull down on this. Oh, I'm gonna have to pry down on that. And then I'll be able to remove this bolt. Ugh, with an 18. And then we'll move on to the inner bolt. Hopefully this doesn't, yeah, see, that's why you want it loose at first. It's still a little bit sticky, not fun. Crap. Okay, so in this instance, I'm gonna have to grab the shaft of this bolt with vice grips, mole grips if you're in England, grab onto it so I can spin the nut off. That's why you wanted to take it as far off as possible so it was finger tight, but I'm guessing that it was, as it was hitting the drive shaft, that was just not possible to get it up all the way enough so it was finger tight, because then as soon as you've released it from the ball joint, it's now almost impossible to turn it without the ball joint itself spinning. So grab some ball vice grips and get that off in 2 seconds. Okay, so I've got a set of vice grips locked onto the bottom, the ball joint where it goes, or the ball joint shaft between the control arm and the spindle. And now I can, with my 18 mil, if I actually had it, I can take the upper bolt off. Again, that's why you want it as loose as possible and able to freely turn. But there we go. Because once you, it's just going to spin the shaft. This is the same. We're going to be reversing this when we put the new one on, but I'll show you that when we get there. So I can take these vice grips off now. And now this is all done, and we're just going to go move to the main mounting bolt there. I'm not sure what size that is. Back in, I think it's 18 and 19, but I'll be back in 1 second. I'll let you know. Okay, so the rearward bolt, well, from me, is at the front side of the car, is an 18, and the back bolt is a 19. Again, we've marked them so we know where they're going back in. Hopefully that rear bolt will just turn down. Ugh. You know what? I should be loosening it from the other side. What am I, stupid? That's the bolt nut side. This is the bolt side. Always are loose from the nut side. Back in 1 second. Let's move this camera so we can be smart. Okay, so we've moved over to the front side where we should be on this 18mm bolt. I'm gonna have to hold this camera. Hopefully I can hold it a little steady for you. So I have the 18mm socket on the nut on the front. The bolts on the back always unscrew from the nut side. Brain fart there before. Again, when I screw up, I show you. Come on, baby. Oh, I think it's moving. There we go. Okay, so that's coming out. So let's just, instead of watching me unbolt a bolt, let's take that bolt out and then drop the whole arm. Again, this is, yeah, this isn't going to be rocket science on this one, so I don't really need to show you this. I'm just going to be taking a bolt and nut out. It's putting it back in where you're going to need a little bit of finagling. So let me get this out, pull this whole arm out. Again, the ball joint's loosened, everything else is off. And we'll wiggle this arm out and I'll show you. Be back in 1 second to reinstall the new one. Okay, so we got the bolt out, but I'm still trying to wiggle this control arm out. It's a bit of a, I'll show you the bolt. Remember I said it was an eccentric, and there's the line. Oops, there's the line we marked in it. Corresponding to, where'd it go? That line right there. Oh, maybe you can't see that. Yeah, sorry, the sun, getting a little bit of sun right there. You can see the little silver line that I made to mark it. And you can see that in the other side, that means this little groove, it's going to slide into a groove on the other side once it goes through, and it's only going to go in one way when it goes in that way, and then when you turn it, it's going to move the lower control arm up and down. It's going to rock it in and out based on this. Back and forth. So it's going to have to wiggle this sucker out. Might take a minute or two, and you probably don't want to watch that, but again, it's just wiggling a control arm out. There's nothing special about it. It's just wiggling an arm out that's been in there for 20 years. Back in a few minutes. Okay, I'm trying to do this with keeping flaring from the sun from getting to you guys. Anyway, I pulled the old arm out. It took about 2 minutes because I had to pry it out a little bit. It was in there. New one's in. Obviously the lateral link here. It's in between the lateral link and the eccentric bolt here, which is a 19. I'm going to roughly, well, I'm going to get that in and then line that up where it was, which was there. Here's the eccentric washer that goes on the back side. Remember that little groove that's in the nut? That goes into there. So that should only line up in one spot on the back. It can't line up any other way. So let's stick that back in. Again, that little V goes into the little groove that's in the bolt. for some reason. I can't find it on the back side. Come on. How can I be missing that? Spin, spin, spin. It's not going on. Okay. 1 second. You guys stay there and watch. Got ya. There. That's how I missed it. Okay, so that is still, it can't not be lined up because this one, they both turn as a unit, so it can't not be lined up. So you actually only really have to mark one side or the other. But either way, I'm going to put the bolt back on, and I'm not going to tighten this. Very important not to tighten this yet, because this rubber suspension, this rubber bushing is pressed in there, and the suspension is all the way down right now. So if you bolted that in and cinched it up, as soon as you set the car on its wheels, it would push up and stretch that rubber and probably crack it. So always with suspension, control arm suspension bushings and stuff like that, you tighten them when there is weight on the suspension. So what we're going to do is jack the car up by the control arm. Once we get everything else put on, we're going to jack that up so it's at ride height and then tighten this. So right now, I'm going to put the bolts back in for the lateral link, and then work this, get this ball joint back in, and then I don't know if they call this a lateral link. I don't know the exact Porsche terminology for this. I'm sure someone's going to go, oh, that's called a trunnion rod or some craziness. Whatever. I'm going to bolt everything back on, and before I tighten anything, I will come back anyway, just slipping the bolts and nuts back on where we had them. This ball joint, hold on a second, hopefully you can see. I'm going to try and slip that in there, come on. Come on, you can do it. Come on. Okay, how do I take some weight off of the suspension? That'll work. Have to get this up in the air a tiniest little bit to get this to go in. Huh. 1 second, I'm going to, yeah, back in 1 second. I think I need another pry bar. Okay, so we got the lower ball joint in. It didn't need any prying or anything. It just needed, basically, kind of to bear hug the suspension. I came from the front, grabbed it, put your chest into the into the rotor and caliper, and maneuvered around, because the whole thing moves back and forth. A lot of movement in it. So let's get, where is it? The new bolt for my ball joint on there. And just pull that up by hand and get it as snug as possible. Then we're gonna stick the bolt for the lateral arm in, and we'll be back in a minute. Hope you can see that. And there's where the bolt for the lateral, I gotta align this, obviously, with the hole in there in the bushing. So it's going to require some wiggling the whole suspension forward, getting that bolt in. And once we're in there, we're going to tighten them up. I'll show you the torque specs, and I'll show you how to make sure that back control arm isn't, you don't break it. You could easily break it the very first time you go out and drive if you tighten it improperly. I'll be back in a minute. Okay, so we've tightened up the ball joint bolt, the upper bolt on the ball joint, the nut, sorry, on the ball joint to 57 foot-pounds, the lateral arm bolt to 120 foot-pounds, and now the rear control arm, the main mount in the back with the alignment eccentric, we are going to jack up from under the ball joint. Just put a floor jack or a bottle jack or whatever under there. Obviously, hopefully you've got the other rest of the car in jack stands. And we're going to jack the suspension up till it's at about proper ride height. And I'll quickly show you why. Might as well do this. You see this bolt here, when this is grabbed, it's pinched. So what moves is the rubber. This does move a little bit within the metal mount where it's pinched, but generally it's the rubber. And if you've started it down here and tightened it, and then you lower the suspension onto it, it's going to try and crank that rubber all the way back. So what you want to do is tighten it at regular height so that it's only halfway in between its full movement going up and down, or else it'll tear this rubber. And these old mounts, you can see the rubber separated anyway. So again, jack it up to approximate height so it simulates having the car on the ground with the wheels pushing up on it. And that's generally, when you jack it up, it's generally till the weight starts coming off of your jack stand a little bit, and then you know it's basically the same as when the wheel's on the ground with the weight of the car on it. And then we're going to tighten the rear one to 75 foot-pounds and make sure your little lines are lined up. Just line up the front one, or sorry, the rear one. Line it up with your mark. I don't know if mine's lined up or not. Can't see right now, but I have to line that up. Then I'll hold that with the 19mm wrench, and then tighten with the 18 and tighten to about 75 foot-pounds. Where's my torque wrench? Torque wrench right here. Tighten to 75 to 80 foot-pounds. And too tight is not good because it will pinch the crap out of it. Too loose, it's going to flop around. So about 75 foot-pounds. Did I give the other torque specs? About 56 to 60 for the upper ball joint nut, and about 56 to 60 for the ball joint nut, and about 120 for that lateral link bolt. And I think that's about it. Thanks for watching. Any questions or comments, leave them below. If you dislike, go ahead, dislike, but tell me why. I do get dislikes all the time, get them on all kinds of videos, but generally people don't tell me why, what I did wrong. Sometimes camera lighting is bad, but hey, what can you do about that? I work in my driveway. I'm not in some well-lit Photoshop studio, blah, blah, blah. I'm in my garage like most of you are going to be. I'm working under the conditions you guys are going to be working under. So anyway, thank you for watching.